Trump joins us now. Sir, you were listening to that. What's your response to Jeb Bush?
Well, first of all, I think he's a very nice person. I have to say that. And, you know, he gave a speech at one point, and he also, during the debates, he said the country was safe under my brother. And I said, just very nicely, under a very little program, I said, well, wait a minute. It wasn't safe because the World Trade Center fell down under your brother's regime. So the world wasn't safe. The country wasn't safe. We had the biggest catastrophe and the greatest catastrophe we've ever had in history under your brother's reign. So, you know, he could have said maybe safe since, but of course then we went into the war in Iraq, and that was a disaster, complete disaster, cost thousands of lives and everything else. But the fact is, Stuart, he said the country was safe. Well, the country wasn't safe because the World Trade Center had just fallen down.
Well, what was George Bush's responsibility for 9/11, other than the fact that he'd been the president for 9 months?
Well, as Harry Truman says, the buck stops here, okay? And I will say that, you know, in looking back and remembering, having a good memory, you had George Tenet, the head of the CIA, and he said he knew in advance that there would be an attack. He said that. Then you had the FBI, the NSC, and the CIA that weren't talking to each other. You remember that scandal where they hated each other and they were all jealous and lots of problems. And George Tenet actually was the director of the CIA. But the CIA, the NSC, and the FBI, they wouldn't talk to each other. They hated each other. And I'm saying to myself, what kind of management is that? I remember when it was happening, and they weren't able to compare notes. So you had that going wrong. And, you know, I mean, you would have been able, if you read my book, which was in 2000, I actually said that Osama bin Laden, who was a well-known terrorist at that time, I wrote the one political book, and I said Osama bin Laden's going to try and come in and do some big damage. That was 3 years before. So obviously, if I know about it, they know about it. They should have done something about Osama bin Laden.
Well, does Bill Clinton, President Clinton, does he have some responsibility for 9/11? Because he was the president for 8 years before George Bush.
Yes, I think he does. But I think they both do. But you can't say that the country was safe. I mean, how can you say the country was safe? He's just forgetting about one incident, and that was a big incident, and he didn't make that clear either. So he said that. And look, this all started about, I did this small show, and I had mentioned about, you know, the World Trade Center coming down, and frankly, I didn't think anything would be made of it. I didn't think it was a big statement at the time. But
did
I
you
said,
plan
well,
it, Donald? Did you plan to make that statement?
No, I didn't plan it. No, I didn't plan it. No. What happened is that Jeb Bush started talking about it, and instead of just letting it go, he started talking about it. And now everybody, virtually, Stuart, is agreeing with me because, I mean, let's face it, you can't say the country was safe when the World Trade Center came down during his regime. Now, was Clinton possibly also guilty? Yeah, sure. He should have, you know, maybe been more vigilant. And he actually said he knew about Osama bin Laden. I knew about Osama bin Laden because I wrote about him in my book, I think 19 months before the World Trade Center came down.
Is your fight with Jeb Bush over?
Oh, I have no fight with Jeb Bush. I think he's a nice person. I have no fight with Jeb Bush. I mentioned to somebody, unimportant, but I mentioned to somebody that the World Trade Center came down during the Bush thing, so he has to take a certain responsibility for that. I think you would agree. By the way, everybody agrees with me now. I think that, frankly, Jeb shouldn't have brought it up. But I have no fight with Jeb Bush because I like him.
Do you now have a fight with Bill Clinton and or Hillary Clinton? Because you've just said that Bill Clinton has some responsibility for 9/11.
Well, he actually said that he knew that Osama bin Laden was around, but they didn't want to attack him at that time. And in all fairness to him, by that time he didn't knock down the World Trade Center. So they would have had to go in and, you know, get somebody that it would be wonderful if you could read minds. But if you read my book, I actually did. I did have the best vision of anybody because I said Osama bin Laden should be attacked, essentially. But you should read that, written in 2000 and written about, I guess, about 3 years before the event took place. And I talk all about Osama bin Laden. He was a very well-known terrorist at the time. And actually, they read it on one of the shows today, and they couldn't believe because it did have vision. And so it's nice to have vision. What can I tell you?
Now, there's a lot of speculation today about Joe Biden. The speculation is that he is going to run and that he will announce very soon. How would you rate him as a potential opponent?
Well, I think he's fine. Look, he's a vice president, but he's got faulty stats on his side because the country is not doing well. We just, you know, we're the gang that couldn't shoot straight. We You have 19 trillion in debt. We have real unemployment, and you cover this better than anybody. But if you add all of the people that have given up looking for jobs, as you know, that no longer fit into that beautiful statistic of 5.2 or 5.3%, you probably have unemployment of 22% or something. So, look, the country is doing poorly. Our military, we don't win anymore.
We don't
win against ISIS.
You would beat Joe Biden easily?
Well, I think I would. Yeah, I think I would. I mean, I don't know that he's going to do it. I would think he wouldn't do it. Now, I might be wrong about that. I would think he wouldn't do it because I think it's a very hard road for him at this point. It's late, and I think it's a hard road, but everybody's telling me he's going to.
With your Republican opponents, you've gone straight after them, face to face, gone right at them. Would you do the same with Joe Biden?
Yes, I would. I mean, I would just. By the way, I'm always fair, and I'm very much a counterpuncher. You know, with the Republican opponents, I only hit after they hit me, and some of them I haven't hit at all. I have great relationships with many of them, but some of them, I mean, Perry from Texas and Lindsey Graham, and some of these guys, they came at me for no reason. I mean, they were Rand Paul. And the good news is everybody that's hit me has gone down, which is a wonderful thing. I mean, that's what we need for the country.
Can I ask you about Secret Service protection? I believe you asked for it. Can you tell us the nature of the threat that you received?
Well, it's not so much. Look, you've probably seen last night I had 8,000 people in, and it was, I mean, the place was absolutely packed in South Carolina. We have, average crowds of many, many thousands of people. In Dallas, I had 20,000. In Mobile, Alabama, I had 35,000 people. In Oklahoma, I had 20,000 people. And, I go up to New Hampshire, where, by the way, a great poll just came out. The Boston Globe just released their poll, and it's a tremendous poll. I only say it's tremendous because I won. I wouldn't say it was tremendous if somebody else won.
Is the threat, do you think, from a terror group? Or
it could be. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I tell you what, there's such love in these rooms when I go in, or the arenas. There's such love, but we think it's necessary. And by the way, they think it's necessary because the crowds. I get the largest crowds by far of anybody, including Bernie Sanders, by the way. And they want to have. They need it. You need some protection. Sure. There's love in the room. There's great love in the room, but when you have that many people, you need something.
Now, in the